On this week's live stream, learn the surprisingly tricky code that makes this distracted robot decide which clone to chase. Plus, we check in on Mr. T's animated music video and find out how he's using one-point perspective to draw 3D shapes in Scratch. Plus, game reviewer Young has a brand new tower defense game to challenge you. All this and more coming up on the Chromeworks live stream.
Good morning, everybody. It's spring break here in Canada, and I've been having a fantastic time this week, mostly sitting at my desk like a little troll doing coding and stuff. I've been so busy with teaching in the last couple of weeks that it's been really, really difficult for me to do the stuff that I really love to do, which is coding and working with kids. So, well, I guess I was working with kids when I was teaching, but yeah, so this has been a chance for me to get caught up on a whole bunch of projects that I've let kind of fall by the wayside because I was so busy with my day job. So I've set aside all that stuff and I'm ready to really start working on this through the spring break, continuing on through the spring here. I've kind of minimized my other work obligations, so I'm going to be working on content like crazy and working with my co-op students and doing all kinds of work related to this channel. So I'm expecting great things to happen. Today is mostly an update about how some of the work that I have been doing and some of the things that I've been catching up on as time has gone on here. There's a bunch of projects and irons that I've had in the fire that I just really have needed to get moving on. I'm so happy to get them moving on. And every time I do a little bit of work in coding or whatever, I learn something. And so this live stream is mostly about teaching you guys what I've learned this week in my adventures in coding and creating stuff for Scratch. So wow, the chat is very busy today. Welcome to Zoraez from England, who's the head of the educational website Ilmopedia Kids. I've shown you his work before. He does little educational videos aimed at kids of all ages, and that's a website you should definitely check out sometime. So Zora has been asking, what does ADHD mean? And ADHD, it means attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's a common ailment among kids nowadays who are just distracted by things. It just means that you have a propensity to be because of the way your brain is wired, to be distracted by things. There's a whole bunch of other things that go along with it, but that's the classic symptom of ADHD. So our game project today is something called ADHD Robot, and it's just a funny little comment about this robot that I built that is chasing after clone cats, but keeps changing its mind, and it keeps seeing a squirrel and changing its mind and going in a different direction. And I'll show you that in a little bit. Who else is with us today? Blonde Gaming 990 is with us as well. Welcome. And if anyone else is lurking in the chat, please say hello. Welcome to Top Secret Asian, who's Andy, my co-op student, who's been helping me out with stuff in the background. Meanwhile, over on the Discord server, we have Deck from England. Good morning, Deck. I don't hear you, buddy. I think your microphone's muted or something's going on. And we have funny animator Jim from upstate New York. Good morning, Jim. Nice to have you back again.
Morning, Mr. T.
Yeah, so anyway, yeah, we haven't seen you in a few weeks, Jim. You been working on anything interesting?
Yeah, I've been working on, I think I posted in the Show and Tell channel a while ago that new shooter game.
Oh,
so I've been working on that and doing my languages and stuff. Yeah, I haven't been on Discord as much recently.
It's all
we'll
good.
see.
So you've been working on a massively multiplayer shooter game for Scratch. Where I'm not sure how massively multiplayer it is. How many players can play at a time?
It is going to use the Infinite Cloud player engine that I think maybe you showed on the stream a while back.
Yeah, Griff patches.
So
Yeah.
you'll get a lot of players, and it's also going to have enemies like bots that are targeting each other and shooting, just like in the original game. Right
Great.
now, there's about I can add a lot of bots, but the issue is that it starts to lag when you add too many on certain computers.
Right.
So what I'm trying to do right now is just reduce the lag as much as possible, like make the enemies not move as much if they're off screen, stuff like that.
Right, right. So at some point you'll be showing this to my audience. I hope it's probably a little bit early right now, but we did have a sneak preview of it. It's looking very smooth and very cool. So so let us know when that's ready to go. Good morning also to Grayson from Ohio. Am I remembering it correctly? Hi, Grayson.
I'm from Virginia. Hi.
Virginia. Hi. Sorry about that. Welcome, Grayson.
It's fine. Hi.
Have you been on spring break too, Grayson?
Not at the moment.
Oh.
I think I go on spring break sometime in April. So.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure you're looking forward to that. Oh, and we're welcomed on Discord as well by Aiden, who is actually Blonde Gaming 990, who I was just chatting with in the YouTube chat. So he's in both places. Welcome, Aiden. Okay, guys, let's get moving. I know we have lots to show here. I wanted to start talking, first of all, about my AMV. Anyone who's not familiar with the term will want to know that AMV means animated music video. It's a whole genre in Scratch where people are taking music files and making little music videos out of them using animation in Scratch. And this has been something I've been teasing for a long time. I'm really excited after our Robot Idol contest wrapped up last month. I promised that the winning robots from this would be featured in a music video. So I've started working on a video featuring everybody's favorite animated robot, Tankbot, who was the winner of our contest last month. And it's Tankbot was designed by Crazy Kirby Boy from Florida, and he's just done some fantastic work with this. So I've taken this robot and kind of run with it this week, and I've started working on some really interesting music video related background projects and stuff like that. So let me show you what I've been up to here. So this is all in the very, very early stages, but I want to kind of show you what I've been doing. I've just been kind of doing prototype-y type stuff. I did some work with silhouettes. So for example, here's a silhouette image of Tankbot moving across the screen. We're going to keep him hidden at the beginning and then do a reveal somewhere as we get into the song. So let me just show you a little clip from the video I've been working on. I've been debating whether to animate his knees, because the design that Crazy Kirby Boy gave me actually has no knees in it. He's got a single joint in his legs, and I'm thinking that maybe to make him walk a little more realistically, I'm going to want to articulate his knees. So I'm going to actually consult with my friend in a little bit. So Aiden says that that he is going back to school again with no mask on Monday. That's happening to everyone here in Canada as well. It's a big change for everybody, and I'm so excited to be able to be back in schools and back in the world again without having this thing covering me up all the time. So really great news. Anyway, so that's the first little bit of my AMV. That's probably going to be one of the first scenes. I also did some playing around with kind of a factory. It's not quite done yet. This is a conveyor belt I'm going to show you that is going to have robot heads being spit out. And this is one of the scenes that I'm going to be doing in my AMV here. And let me just give you a little sneak preview here. I've started animating Tankbot, doing a little musical number here. Here we go. So there's another example. You might notice the background there. I'm going to show that again. Pay special attention to the background, to the assembly line going on in the background there. So So I spent quite a bit of effort getting that background set up with the proper perspective, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. So the general idea of this, I have messed up my little line along the bottom of the screen here. I've just noticed that I'm not even saying the right thing here. It says talking magic 8 ball. Please ignore the magic 8 ball. We'll fix that during the break. So actually, in the meantime, I can go down to a screen here that doesn't have that on it. There we are. Okay, so yeah, I'm very excited about this AMV project and looking for help. If anyone wants to participate in this, you can create backgrounds for me, you can help me animate characters, and eventually we're going to be redoing this piece of music. You probably won't recognize this as the famous piece of music from the 1980s that has a robot theme to it. And so what I'm going to be doing is actually doing a cover of this. My wife, Lynn, who's quite a talented musician, is going to help me to recreate this. And there's going to be room for you guys to help out with that as well. So there's all kinds of opportunities for you guys to jump into this project. If you want to join my AMV or want to submit some kind of a design, you can just leave a note for me on my Scratch profile page, which is at Mr. Tomek. And we'll get in touch from there, and we can see what you can help me with. So if you're interested, or you can join me on Discord, of course. You guys all know how to join me on my Discord server. Just go to the live stream page on my website, chromeworks.ca, and there's instructions there for how to join my little network. All right, so this AMV, I want it to be dark and creepy. It's inspired by a couple of really, really ancient film projects that I really admire. Number one is Metropolis, which is a science fiction movie from way back in 1927 that's very, very dark and creepy, and it's been very inspirational for a lot of futuristic films. So I want it to be dark and creepy. Oh, here's a great factory scene I'll show you. So I want it to be a little reminiscent of this, and also reminiscent of another black and white movie, Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times. And so you guys might have seen this before. Where was it? Here it is, Modern Times. So this is a very famous scene here where he gets wrapped up in the equipment. You just hang on a second. You go through the gears. Yeah, there he is. And he ends up falling into the machine. There he goes. So my robot AMV is going to have lots and lots of gears and equipment and smokestacks like that. If you're interested in making graphics for this project, then I'd be very, very happy to have your help. So we're going for dark, grungy, full of gears and smokestacks, if you're interested in helping. Let's see what's happening in the chat here. Funny animator Jim sent me a gear. Is Charlie Chaplin still alive? Asks Zora S. And no, unfortunately, he's not. He was born in the early 1900s and he died, I think, maybe back in the 1980s. He lived to a fairly old age, but he died in the 70s or 80s. If someone wants to look that up and let me know in the chat, I'd love to answer Zora's question a little bit. The song, so Aiden is asking what the name of the song is that I'm playing. It's called Freakazoid, and you're going to be hearing a little bit more of it. Top Secret Asian says 1889 to 1977. Yeah, he did live to a ripe old age. But he died back in 1977. Yeah, really sad. He was a very talented guy, and he lived a long life. If you guys haven't seen his movies, they're all on YouTube, and he did some really amazing work before there was sound in movies, and just a real role model for other filmmakers. Anyway, okay, so one of the things I wanted to talk about today was one-point perspective, which is the technique that I used to make the factory scene that I just showed you. Let's get that back again here. So actually, so let me just hide my robot here. And you can see how everything kind of fades off into the background here in kind of a fake 3D perspective. That's called a one-point perspective, and it's a really easy thing to do in Scratch. I wanted to give you guys a quick run-through of how to do your own one-point perspective if you're interested in making really cool animations that have a 3D kind of look to them. It's super simple, actually. So let's get into a see inside in this project. The key is you need a horizon line, and between the horizon line and the thing called the vanishing point, you end up setting where your 3D camera is going to be. So you draw your horizon line. It can be up, if it's up high like this, you get one kind of image, and if it's down low, you'll get a different kind. Let me just put it towards the top here. And then we set a vanishing point, which again sets your 3D camera angle. So let's say I wanted to draw a 3D wall that's approaching me, just like I did inside the original video that I showed you guys a minute ago, the AMV. So we start with, what's going on here? My Scratch is frozen. I might have to refresh my screen here. It seems like oh. Yeah, I'm stuck in some kind of a loop here or something. Let me do it could be my AMV project. Let me try stopping a few things. And the thing's still not responding. Let me do a screen refresh. I gotta save my file first. Sorry guys, Scratch is acting up today. What's happening in the chat? So Zorez says that he really likes Chaplin's work as well. He really thinks he did some amazing stuff. All right, let's get in here and see if we can actually manipulate this costume now. Can I switch? Yeah, I can switch tools now. Okay, so you set a horizon line that basically determines what the camera angle of your 3D camera is going to be. And then you set something called a vanishing point. Now from there, you can just start with a shape. So let's say I'm drawing a 3D wall. It's going to be tall and narrow here. I'm going to go with a black outline, and I'm going to fill it. I like filling these things with a little bit of a 3D kind of effect. So I'm going to go down with the saturation and do different shades of gray here. So yeah, we're going to go with a gradient here, going from one shade of gray to another one, and let's fill it up with that color. There we go. So actually I'm going to flip it. Oh no, I think that's a good setting here. So let's say this is a 3D wall that I want to draw. The idea is you just grab a line tool and connect the corners of this thing to your vanishing point. Just like that. And like that. And like that. So it seems really, really harsh, but that's because of where we set the vanishing point. Like depending on where you put it, you're going to end up having more or less of this kind of squeezing effect of it going down to nothing. Now we're not going to use the entire image here. We're just going to use this as a reference point. So my next step here is to draw another rectangle. I'm going to draw a rectangle like this, and we want it to basically fill up the spot beside here. So if I want to turn this into kind of a 3D wall, I basically want to draw a vertical line here that blocks off where this line is going to be. But instead of drawing lines and filling them up, I'm going to use pre-existing shapes here. Now I can do it from this perspective here, but because I want the gradient to actually spin around, let me show you something here. So I'm going to take this object and tilt it a little bit. And then I'm going to reapply this, this gradient here. So let's go back and reset the gradient. You can see that the gradient starts at the top color and then goes down to the bottom in a vertical line here like that. So you want to set up these gradients before, in this case, before we spin the object, because we want the light part to always be at the top. So if I change the shape of my object, the lighting is going to come from the top here, which is not good because we want the lighting to come in a 3D angle. So always set up your gradients before you spin your object in this kind of a scenario. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to conform it so that the height matches the height of my 3D object here, just like that. And then I'm going to grab this reshape tool, which is a super handy tool that creates these control points that you can draw across here. So I'm going to draw a big long line here. And I'm going to draw this one here. Now this vertical line here has to be straight up and down because we're working with figures that are straight up and down. There we go. Now I need to do the same thing with a second box for the top, which is also visible here. So let's rotate this. Actually, I want the lighting to come from the top, so I'm going to have to do it tall and narrow instead, wide and narrow this way before I turn it. And then the lighting will be coming from the right direction. All right, so now let's spin it a little bit and try and match up close to the angle that already exists in this shape here. Now we can start redrawing it. So I'm going to grab the corners and match up with the corners in the existing object, making sure that I'm always, when I'm drawing cross lines, they always have to be at 90-degree angles, just like that. You can see what I'm doing here. Straight lines, straight lines. Okay, so now this isn't quite there. I'm going to have to tweak it a little bit, but when I get rid of my guidelines here, you'll see that I've got a fairly decent looking 3D shape here that I think will work quite nicely in any kind of a project. So as you draw more of these, I could draw another one from the other side here. We can start to build up a 3D environment in Scratch that really works very effectively. These corners are really a problem. When you have sharp corners in Scratch like this, it always creates problems. It's something that I have been tooling around with as I've been learning more drawing in Scratch. And one thing that you can do to get rid of those is we can round off the corners. So I'm going to grab this reshape tool and add a new control point really close to the original object, just like that. Chunk. And I'm going to add another one on the other side, like that. Now I'm going to grab the original corner here and click on the point at the end here. And then I'm going to click on this button here that says curved. I'm going to switch this from a pointed corner to a curved one. And watch what happens. That little corner part disappears. And suddenly I've got something that works much more nicely. I'm going to do the same thing with this other jutting corner here. I'm just going to convert the corner into a curve. And then I can bring it in and make it conform to my line a little bit better without things messing up. All right, so this one needs a little bit more cleaning up, but that's the basics of how to draw a 3D shape in Scratch using forced perspective. Zorez is very impressed. He's just writing, whoa, 3D art on Scratch. How much tabs do I have open at one time? Asks Aiden. Well, right now I've got 8 of them open. At the beginning of my broadcast, I always try to have all the tabs open that I'm going to need to do things. And so if I want to show, I know that when the time comes that I want to show the Charlie Chaplin thing, I'm going to hit Control-2 on my keyboard because I know it's the second tab. I actually have a cheat sheet here that tells me which tabs I'm going to be running at any given time. And so I can just hit Control-2 on my keyboard and jump right to that. And then Control-3 is Metropolis and Control-4. And they're all in chronological order of how I'm going to be teaching the lesson, basically. Anyhow, so that's a quick intro to 3D perspective. I'm going to be doing probably a standalone tutorial on this at some time because I think it's a really handy tool to use in Scratch. Anyhow, let's move along here. So that's all I wanted to say about my AMV project. Really excited about it though, and I'm really looking for help. So if you want to draw a background for me, that's what I'm mainly working on right now. Then once I get a bunch of backgrounds, I'm going to start animating my robot, and I'll have a bunch of extras who will also want to animate too. And so you guys will be able to create animations for me, time them to the music, and then send me the sprites, and I'll be able to incorporate them into the film. This kind of collab video making is something that's happening a lot in Scratch right now, and most of the big Scratchers are from time to time taking on teams of assistants and people who are helping them. So I'm trying to get into this whole thing with this project right now, and if you're interested in starting this digital storytelling project idea and moving beyond just making games in Scratch and using it as a storytelling tool, this would be a great way to jump into it. So I'm inviting everyone out there in the Scratch community who's interested in joining me to to reach out to me, and we'll get you working on this project with me. You will be credited if you join this. We'll put you in the end credits, and I will be able to talk to you on the live stream, or at least show off your work on the live stream. So it's definitely a way to get some exposure for your work in Scratch if you're interested. All right, guys. So I've been doing some other stuff. As I said, spring break has been a very busy time for me to catch up on stuff. One of the projects I've been working on for quite a while is this Wordle game, which is tab 5 here. Let me show that to you. So lots of code. I've actually finished the 6th part of this tutorial. I did parts 5 and 6 this week, and my Wordle game is taking shape quite nicely. It's not quite done yet. There's no winning condition yet, but you can see here that you can enter text with your keyboard or with your on-screen keyboard here. So if I enter a word like, let's do a 5-letter word like giant. What happened there? Let's go back. We can delete with these keys. G-I-A-N-T. There we go. And then hit enter, and it will evaluate the word and tell us where we are. So my test word here actually has a G in the correct place and has a T in the correct place, and the I, A, and N don't even exist in here. I happen to know that the test word I'm using here is ghost, and that's why I was able to figure this out. So I did mention before that this does actually look at words in the English language. So if you try to enter some kind of made-up word, it will generate an error message and it won't let you continue. I'm probably going to add a little bit more prompt text to that. So your selections are showing up on this keyboard here the same way they do in the real Wordle game. I'm really happy with the progress on this game, and it's coming along nicely. It's one of the more pro-looking projects that I've done in the last little while, and I'm quite happy with it. So that's going to be, we're going to release the final part of that this week, and this game will be released to the Scratch community. While I was doing this, I fell down a bit of a rabbit hole. I was looking at how I can take the giant list of all the words in the English language and start filtering through it, and that's part of what I've been doing here. But as I did that and started figuring out the logic of how to make these letters, how to search through the list for words that start with the letter G, for example, and filter that out, it got me thinking that there's probably ways that I can further manipulate this engine that I've created here and use it to do a cheater program for Scrabble. Now, this isn't quite done yet, but I am working on a Wordle solver project here that I haven't released to the public yet, and it's not quite done, but it's, let me just shut the music off here. So it basically lets you enter the text of your word. So in this case, I was looking for the word giant, and I got the letter G, and it was green, and I had the letter T, and it was green. And when I click the solve button here, what it's going to do is filter through all the 5-letter words in the English language and show me only the words that start with G and end in T. And you can see that there's not a huge list here. There's 42 words, and from there I would be able to probably quite quickly figure out that giant was what I was looking for, and that is one of the 42 words here. And if I put in some yellow letters as well, you can see that it would make an even smaller list. So let me imagine I put an I here in the middle spot in my word instead, and that one was yellow. Now it'll also give me words that have a G in the spot, T in the spot, and an I somewhere in one of these 3 spots. And now my list is down to 13 words, right? So the more information you feed it, the fewer choices that you're going to have. Let's go ahead and add an A into a yellow spot as well and try to solve it. You can see now we're just down to 2 words. So the more information you give it, the closer it gets to answering. I'm very excited about this project, and yeah, I learned a lot as I was making it. And so I got so excited about what I was learning that I started working on this secondary project, which, as I said, isn't quite done yet either. So I've got 2 half-done projects that I'm going to be releasing out in the wild very, very soon that I'm really excited about. All right, one of the other things that I learned while I was making this was just how difficult it is to work with clones. So in my Wordle project, all of these letters are clones, and these the keyboard letters are also clones. And so I had to set up a system where I was creating clones and they were individually changing themselves around, and when I was doing something on this side of the screen, it had to order just certain specific clones to do stuff. It turns out that that ordering clones around when you're inside one sprite and trying to tell only a small subsection of other clones what to do is really, really quite complicated. The deeper I got into that, the more I learned about the complexities of this stuff, and it got me thinking that I could make a really interesting lesson off of how to order clones around. And this is how this ADHD Robot project came up. And it's fairly complicated, so rather than teaching it all to you in one fell swoop here and trying to do it live, I've pre-recorded this thing and I'm going to be releasing it as a standalone project. But I'm going to give you guys a preview of it right now. So it's about 15 minutes long, and I'm going to show you guys how I managed to create this project that orders clones around. And I thought the best way to do it would be to have one object in a game chasing after other games, but changing its mind who it's chasing after. And we'll let Mr. Tomek explain it to you in more detail here right now. Today we're going to code a confused robot who keeps changing his mind about who he's chasing after on the game screen. It's an interesting little coding exercise that reveals just how difficult it is to get an individual sprite to pay attention to multiple clones. Okay, what's going on here? Something bad has happened. In a chaotic, unfinished project down below, and follow along with me if you're interested. So you can see that we've got some fairly simple code set up here. I've got a robot moving randomly across the screen, and I've got 5 cloned cats also moving and bouncing randomly across the screen. You can see that the code's fairly simple. Here's the code for the robot. It's just pointing in a random direction and moving and switching costumes. The cat has similar code, except before it starts moving, it picks a color for each clone before it makes the clones of itself. So we have 2 very simple kinds of characters floating around the screen, not really paying much attention to each other. What I want to do in this project is add some interactivity so that the cats respond to what the robot is doing and the robots respond to what the cat is doing. Now, getting the cats responding, the clone characters responding, is a fairly simple matter. If, for example, I want to make my cats afraid of my robot, I can go ahead and program a when I start the clone and just get them into an endless loop here where they're checking their distance to the ADHD robot. I set an arbitrary figure here of around 50 or so. So whenever these guys get a little bit too close, now I could tell them to flip 180 degrees, but in practice that's going to cause problems because they're going to start to get confused and wiggle around a lot because they're constantly going through this loop and flipping one way or the other. A better solution here is to get them to point towards my robot and then flip away so that they're always moving away from my robot. Let's have a look at that now, and you can see my cats are appropriately frightened of the robot. Now, moving in the opposite direction is a whole lot more complicated. If I'm trying to program my robot, for example, to respond to whoever the closest cat is, I can measure my distance to the original cat, but I can't look at individual clones, and Scratch in fact has no way to talk to individual clones here that really works easily with this kind of a coding scenario. So how do I program my robot, as I'd like to here, to change direction based on which cat is closest to it? So to get the robot behaving intelligently with these multiple clones, we're going to have to get it to be able to tell the different cats apart from each other. We're going to do that with a local variable, which you'll remember we can create by clicking on the For This Sprite Only radio button when we're creating our variables here. I'm going to create a variable called clone ID and set it to 0 here. And each time that we come around this loop, I'm going to change it by 1 so that the first time that it creates a clone, it's going to be stamped with this clone ID of number 1. And every time it comes around the loop, it's going to add 1 more to the clone ID number. You can see how that works when I add this block here that says say clone ID to the when I started the clone. You'll see that each of these individual guys has their own unique number as they're moving around the screen. So this is how our robot's going to be able to tell each of these guys apart from each other. So that ID number is going to be helpful, but it still hasn't solved our problem because the code blocks that we're working with here don't really acknowledge that there's more than one flavor of cat. Distance to cat, for example, here will only tell us our distance away from the main reference cat and not from the clones, and there's no way to modify this to add a clone ID to it. The same goes for our reporter block here, which you can use to find information about other characters on the screen. So again, we can find the X position of our cat, of our main reference cat, but there's no way to modify it to look at individual clones. So since there's no block that will actually give us the information that we need, which is how far away we are from the individual cats, we're going to have to get a little creative here and have the cats actually write down what their distance is from the robot. And we're going to do that using a list variable. You guys remember that list variables are just variables that can hold multiple pieces of information here. What I'm going to do here is create a list of 5 different numbers, each one of them the distance away from the robot of that particular cat. So cat 1 will be the first on the list, cat 2 will be the second, etc. all the way through the list here. And we're going to get that list constantly updating itself with how far away each cat is away from the robot. And then the robot will be able to just look at that list and figure out which cat is closest to it at any given time. So we're going to start with a when I started the clone command, which is basically going to start ordering our clones to add information to the list. So this is going to run 5 times. Each of our 5 clones is going to start adding information about its distance from the robot. Now we want to be able to take all this data and sort it apart. So we're going to use this list block here called insert thing. And what this block has is an additional bubble in it that allows you to pick which slot the information is going into. So we're going to take this block here called distance to ADHD Robot. It's a fairly long number here because Scratch keeps track of this to like 12 decimal places, which is way more information than we need. So to simplify things, we're going to round that number off, and that will give us a distance in just a nice whole round number. So we want to insert that information into the list here, so I'll put it into the place where the word thing is here. Now, we want each of these guys to insert it at the slot that matches their ID number. So where the number 1 is here, I'm going to put a clone ID number. There we go, and that will let it know that it's supposed to add it at that particular slot. Okay, so let's click the green flag, and you'll see that our list here immediately adds the distances to my robot. Now they're not being updated, so we're going to have to go back in and modify this to add the distances constantly as the game progresses. So you'd think that we could just wrap this insert up in a loop here to start adding our information, but you can see when we run our program, it actually starts adding it constantly. So it's not doing what it's advertising here and adding it at that number In order to do that, we have to use a different block here called replace item. So we're just going to run this the first time just to get our list initialized. And after that, we're going to start updating the information forever using this replace item here. So so the numbers are switched around here. The clone ID goes at the beginning. That's the slot where the item is. And we're replacing it with the same information again, the distance to the robot rounded off. So let's have a look at that list here. You see we've got a ton of information on our list here. One of the things that I'm going to want to do is clear off that list when we start off our game. So right at the beginning here under the green flag, I'm going to delete all of the existing distances from the list. Okay, let's run that one more time. And you can see that now our list is updating nicely with the distances away from the robot. So we're still inside our cat sprite here, and what we want to do next is sort through this list that we're creating here and try and figure out which of these numbers is lowest, and then feed the ID number of that cat that's the closest to the robot over to the robot so that he can respond to it. Now, it's a fairly complex process, and I'm just going to walk you through these steps a little at a time here. So we start with the green flag and we get into a forever loop here where we're just constantly comparing our distances. So we got a variable here called smallest cat distance. You're going to see we're going to feed our information through a bunch of different variables here so that we're not constantly updating the information that we're sending to the robot. We only want to send it at the end of all these calculations, and this number smallest cat distance here is going to change as we start making comparisons. We're starting it off at item 1 of the list, and we're just going to start working through the list here, trying to compare our current number to what's the next item on the list and the next one, each time figuring out if it's larger or smaller than the item before it. So we're going to set smallest cat distance to the value of the first item on our list in that current moment. Then we've got a variable called I here that's just going to measure the number of times that we've gone around this loop. So each time we go around the loop, we're going to change our I by 1. So the first time around, it's going to be 1. And we're going to say if item 1 of our list is smaller than the smallest cat distance, then we're going to do some stuff. Now, the first time around, that's not going to do any good because we've already, our smallest cat distance is already item 1 on the list. So it's only the second time around the loop here that it's going to actually start to compare distances. So it's looking at the number that's in item 1 of the distances list and trying to measure if it's smaller than the amount that's currently in the variable. It's the same as setting a high score in a high score table as well. We're looking to see if the current number that is bigger or smaller than the existing number. And if it's smaller, since we're looking for the smallest number here, then we're going to overwrite that existing smallest distance. So what we're going to do if that number is smaller is we're going to reset that variable to the new information, which is item 1 or 2 of, or 3 or 4 or 5 of distances. So each time we determine that there's a new smallest number, we're going to update that variable, and we're also going to update a variable here called I'm closest. And what this variable keeps track of is the item number of that information. So this information, smallest cat distance, is the actual distance, and this I'm closest variable is going to track the number. So if our smallest number on the screen here is 110, for example, the information in I'm closest is going to be 2. It's going to know that slot 2 is the closest one. And so it's finding that out by determining the item number of the information here. Now this information is changing so fast that at the end, once we exit this loop here, it's not going to be the same anymore, and we're not going to be able to compare the information in the smallest cat with the list here anymore because it will already have changed. So we're saving it into this variable, and then at the last minute, after we're done all of our checks, we're feeding that information into a variable called closest cat. And so that is the information that will get passed on to the robot. I hope that made sense to you guys. So if we test the program out now, you'll see that as different cats approach our robot, that closest cat number changes, which is great. That's exactly what we're looking for. Okay, to make things a little easier for you, I've added a little bit of extra code here when I connect this, when I started the clone here. What this is going to do is basically, now that we have the number of the closest cat, we can get that cat. So if the clone's ID number matches the number of the closest cat, we're going to get it to actually say, I'm closest. And if it's not the closest one, then it's just going to say blank, which is going to blank out that voice bubble for that particular cat. We're also going to be storing the XY coordinates of the closest cat and just storing it in a global variable here called closest cat X and closest cat Y. That's going to be important later on because we want our robot to be pointing in the direction of the closest cat and turning to face that regardless of where that is. But we won't be able to actually get it to point at the clones of the cat because, again, the point at command doesn't actually talk to clones, just like most of the blocks here. So if we say point towards, we can point towards a different sprite, but we can't point at a clone. So that's why we're going to have to store its XY coordinates. Okay, so I'm going to remove the other say command from this robot from these cats here that's making them say their clone ID. And now we'll just have the one clone talking. That's the one that's closest, and let's have a look at that now. So he's closest, and then you can see that it's shifting around from one cat to the next, and it is. Sometimes takes a second to catch up, but it is keeping track of who's closest in a reasonably accurate way, at least accurate enough for an AI in a game. Okay, so now, how do we get our robot turning to chase after individual clones? Again, we can't point in the direction of a clone, but we can't point in the direction of an XY coordinate. Now, the easiest way to get that done is to use a reference object. I've created an object here called marker, which is right here. It's just a little invisible dot. I mean, you can draw whatever you want, or even have a blank sprite here. So we're going to code this marker to just keep moving to the closest cat X and closest cat Y coordinates. It's going to be invisible as we're playing the game here, so it's not something that players are going to be able to see, but it's a reference that the robot is going to be able to see. So now if we go over to our robot, we can tell it to point towards the marker, and we'll just have it doing that constantly in our forever loop here as the game progresses. And let's give our game one final spin here. So you can see that our ADHD robot is living up to his reputation. He's going to keep chasing after whichever of these cats is closest to it at any given moment. So he'll change his direction, constantly getting distracted by whoever the newest closer robot is. So now he's chasing after the pink guy, and if somebody else draws close, he'll change his mind and start chasing after him. Alright, so it's not much of a game, but I think this is an interesting little experiment and something that you can definitely use in the creation of AIs and other video games. I could easily see programming this robot to shoot at random people, for example, depending on the ID number, and you could get it to interact with other clones in all kinds of interesting ways. So if you've got an interesting way to remix this file and turn it into something more of a game, I'd love to see it. Please share it with me, and I'll put it on next week's live stream. In the meantime, thanks a lot, guys. Well, thank you for that report, Mr. Tomek. So yeah, really interesting little bit of code there turns out to be much more complicated than I thought. And so list variables, it turns out, are the real solution to this problem. Just posting that information. So once it gets into a list, then any sprite can look at this information. Whereas when you're working with clones, there's always this problem of who can see the information and who are you talking to. So once you add the information to your list, then you can have the clones and other sprites looking at information like the XY coordinates of your clones or what their ID numbers is or whatever, and be able to always refer to that from elsewhere. So so list variables are your friends here. I don't know why I'm suddenly not able to type in the YouTube chat. Let me try this one more time. Nope. It just keeps coming up gray with error messages when I'm entering text. So I was going to post some links for you guys to look at. You can find the link to this ADHD Robot project in the file description. As I said, I was going to post it in the chat here, but I can't do that. Someone's suggesting I reload my page here. It's a little bit more complicated than that, because I've got it inside another window. I've done a breakout window here. Let me yeah, it's a little bit complicated right now. I've popped out the chat. Anyway, I got to keep moving here. I will sort this out while I'm showing my next thing. We have one more piece of content for you today. I mentioned that my co-op students are on vacation this week because it is spring break. But Young, my game reviewer, did manage to complete 2 game reviews before he went off on vacation. So we have one more in the hopper to show you. So this week, Young is showing us a tower defense game called Heavy Tower Defense. And let's get to that right now.
I'm going to be reviewing a tower defense game called Heavy Tower Defense. Tower defense game is basically a game where there are enemies that will walk along a path and you have to put down towers to destroy those enemies. So without further ado, let's get into things.
This game requires strategy, requires wit, requires patience, requires dedication. I've been waiting here for 20 waves. I've had people in the comment section of this game saying, I can't make it past level 20. I can barely make it to level 20, guys. I only made it to level 21. Here I am, going on the final wave of level 20. I'm going to be putting down all my triples. And as I said, this is not a game for us weak-minded people. We need to be smart. We need to overcome the challenges that we are faced. There are now 8 purple guys left. Can we defeat them? It looks like the answer is yes, but we don't know until it reaches the end. It seems as if we are managing to defeat them at the moment. It seems as if it is approaching my last one that I just placed down here. And I can place down some more just to guarantee it. And it seems like we're about to make it. Maybe we won't get it. Maybe it's looking less and less likely. It's looking... Oh, we can get it. We can still get it. We can
Your
still get
work
it.
can feel...
And we managed to survive with 1 health at wave 20. CS 2889410 is a scratcher that joined 3 years and 4 months ago. I can assume the CS stands for computer science, but I'm not quite sure. They created Heavy Tower Defense and many other games, so they're a very experienced game maker. All of these other games seem very interesting. CS has 2,376 followers, and overall, their games look pretty amazing. They make games for studios, and honestly, they seem to have a lot of followers, so I'm excited to see what they... Let's start off with one of my favorite segments, the select screen. So, unfortunately, this game does not have a select screen, so unfortunately we're gonna have to skip that. There is something that pops up, however. It says like and favorite to gain 100. Some of you might not want to do that, but trust me, this game is extremely difficult. You have to like and favorite the game. It is so difficult to be able to beat the game, because you're only stuck with a basic for the whole game, and like basics are terrible. You don't want to be stuck with basics. You want to start the game off with a double. Basics will only take up space, and that is absolutely not ideal. So let's just jump straight into things. I'm just gonna be showing you guys my strategies to beat this and what I think the game can be improved on. First, you want to put the double right here using the $100 you got from Harding and starring the game. You can just put it right here. The lines need to be straight here. You don't need to cover all of the brown area. You can just cover half of it, because as you can see, they only travel through the middle. There also needs to be more maps implemented. I don't know why this is just the only map. The more angles there are, the more competitive integrity there is. I also think that it's quite boring how there's only one type of tower. They only do the same thing. They're just stronger than one another. I don't think that's enough strategical depth to the game. So I'd love it if they added more strategical depth within the game. Like, for example, in balloons, only certain towers can break certain balloons, or in this case, we can make certain towers break certain arrows. And I think that would add a lot more fun to the game, and it would make you think a lot more. One other thing, I think there needs to be sound effects, because I'm looking at this and it looks pretty cool. I'm not hearing anything. There's just background music. There needs to be a pop or something when it shoots, or when it pops one of these arrows. There just needs to be something else. I'm not feeling it. It feels quite empty here. I'm just looking at it, you know? That's pretty much all I have. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Well, thank you for that report, Young. So Young will be back again next week with another game review, and we'll have all our co-op students back with some more content. We're gonna continue our art tutorial series that we started, and we've got a whole bunch of other stuff in the hopper as well. So you'll be seeing a lot more co-op content starting next week. Funny Animer Jim says that he thinks Young was really enjoying himself when he made the video, and yeah, he seems very enthusiastic about his job. So I'm always very happy to see that from my co-op students. They all have different talents that they bring to this, but they're all learning very quickly, and this week we'll be doing some intensive training with them and trying to up their game a little bit. So I'm hoping we'll have some really good quality videos to show you next week. So I mentioned in the chat that Paddler Games, a celebrity scratcher who's an awesome digital storyteller, has been running an animation contest, and right after this stream he will be starting his own live stream where he'll be reviewing entries to that contest. So hop on over there after you're done with us if you like, and Paddler would love to have you. He's a great friend of the Chromeworks channel, and I always like to give him a plug. So that is about all the content I have for you this week. Please join my AMV contest if you're not a contest, my AMV project if you're interested in digital storytelling in Scratch and want to take part in this really cool music video that I'm putting together. There's room for everybody to participate, and I've got little jobs that I can hand out to all kinds of people. Especially right now, I'm looking for dark, grungy, industrial backgrounds, particularly things with kind of a 3D perspective that I can pose my robot in front of. So I'm just looking for dark, animated environments with lots of gears and smoke and stuff like that moving around, and hopefully like with low-level lighting or black and white or whatever. And whatever those scenes look like, I can pose my characters in front of them and have them do dances and stuff. So if you're interested in participating, start working on something, share the file with me on my profile page, or reach out to me here on Discord, and I would love to show whatever you're working on. As we continue with this project, I'll be giving you weekly updates on how things come along, and I'm really excited about this. This is our first big collab project, but to make it a collab, I need your help. So please join me, guys. In the meantime, I'm going to sign off for now. I had a great time this week, and we'll be back next week with a whole ton of new content, and looking forward to that. So